No, I totally get it. I feel obsessed with my tongue now, and all my people, they just come up to me and they show me their tongue, and I'm like, yo, at least say hello first. Something. You'd be surprised the amount of unsolicited tongue pics I get in my DMs.
Welcome to the Self Within podcast, where we will look to ancient traditions and modern insights to seek guidance, knowledge, and practical tools to help us reconnect with our true selves. Join me, your host, as we explore various topics from mindfulness and meditation to energy healing, astrology, and much more. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Self Within. So today we're going to be talking about the body and how it communicates with us. And we're going to really be doing that through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine. So here to chat with us about this and share her wisdom is Dr. Kassie Sorokach, who is a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese herbal medicine, a certified functional medicine practitioner, and faculty at Dragon Rise's College of Oriental Medicine, where she trains the next generation of Chinese medicine healers. She's also the founder of Divine Integrative Wellness and the creator of the Aligned Essence Method, a framework that helps women get to the root of what's really going on in their bodies by combining TCM pattern assessment with functional lab analysis. Welcome, Dr. Kassie, to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I love traditional Chinese medicine. But for those people that are just listening that maybe have never heard it or maybe just haven't experienced it themselves, how would you actually describe traditional Chinese medicine and how it works?
Yeah, so Western medicine tends to ask, what is wrong, right? That's what we know with conventional medicine. Chinese medicine asks, why is it happening and where did it start? So Chinese medicine is thousands of years old, 3,000 plus, 4,000 plus. We don't even really know. I've seen all the way back to 8,000 years old. It's a 3,000 plus year old medical system that treats the person and not the disease. And the core idea is the body is intelligent and self-regulating when energy, or what we call our qi, our blood and our fluids, are flowing freely. And we look at patterns within the body, how the systems are talking to each other, not the isolated parts or the individual symptoms, because symptoms are not the problem. They're the body's communication that something upstream essentially is off.
Yeah, totally. I think we've been taught to look at symptoms and manage symptoms and address symptoms, right? Like when we go to the doctor, the first thing is we're complaining about what's happening, what's going on, what's showing up. And I think the why that you just referenced is layers underneath it. Even as a Reiki practitioner, it's like, how do we get to the root cause of the surface level emotional pattern that's showing up or physical pattern, right? How do you typically diagnose a patient? What does that look like and what does that tell you traditionally?
So if I have a patient in person, I do something, it's called the four pillars. We look, we listen, we ask, and we palpate. So we look at a couple different things when we're looking at the body. We look at their tongue, which is an internal organ map. It's a microsystem. It's one of my favorite things to do. It talks about the shape, the color, the coating, the cracks. It tells us about if there's heat, if there's cold, if there's deficiency, stagnation, digestive issues, so many different things. We can look at the ear, we can look at the face, the eyes, everything. There's so many microsystems in the body. We can feel the pulse. The pulse in Chinese medicine has so many different qualities or so many different positions. The pulse I use is contemporary Chinese medicine pulse, and it's from Dr. Shen Hammer. And there's multiple positions. It's not just three positions on both sides, and there's a lot of different qualities. And so this will tell us a lot about what's happening in the individual organs. We do a very, very detailed intake. It's a lot more in depth than your regular westernized conventional medicine intake. We're asking about your digestion, like what color is your poop? What shape is your poop? How often are you going? And all the very intimate details, which some people are a little uncomfortable with, but that's okay. We ask about their sleep, their menstrual cycles, emotion, energy patterns by the time of day. And we're listening, their tone of voice, like how they're talking, the inflections. And together, this gives the whole pattern diagnosis, the assessment, the root, not just the symptom, by combining all of these together. So it's very, very thorough. An intake with us is not 10 minutes. It's usually at least an hour.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I love the tongue thing. I'll quickly share a story. A long time ago, I had seen a practitioner. He was like a massage therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it because I had never experienced any kind of massage like that. It was very much about acupressure and stretching and pulling. And I like to work out. And so that's the kind of massage that I needed. So anyway, so I went to his session and the first thing we do is let me see your tongue. And I remember feeling so embarrassed. I'm like, oh my God, I brushed my teeth this morning. What is he going to find? That was the biggest thing. And he like told me my whole story from my tongue. And I was like, oh no. And that was years ago. And fast forward to now, I sort of have gotten back into looking at my tongue.
Mhm.
So I look at it every single day. I sort of know basics and I use it as a way to assess myself where I'm like, okay, I think I need to cut out maybe this. I think I maybe had too much greasy food here, maybe too many sweets, or I can tell that. So I've sort of have started to pay attention and I use a tongue scraper and things. And I got it as a gift for everyone in my family one year. I think my oldest daughter, who's about to be 10, she has started using it. And I was like, ooh, I was like really excited because, in the beginning, everyone was like, what is this, mom? Like, are you nuts? And I was like, oh, maybe it's rubbing off the tongue thing.
That's great. I will say in Chinese medicine, we actually prefer to see the tongue before you scrape it. It's more
Yeah.
diagnostically relevant to us when we see it, like with its true coat. But yes, no, I totally get it. I feel obsessed with my tongue now, and all my people, they just come up to me and they show me their tongue, and I'm like, yo, at least say hello first. Something, something. You'd be
Oh my
surprised the amount of unsolicited tongue pics I get in my DMs. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
That's
Oh
funny.
man. The other thing that's so fascinating to me has always been the pulse because that to me is like the hardest thing to sort of notice and pay attention to. What are you actually listening for when you're listening to the pulse? Or sorry, maybe feeling for?
Feeling
Yeah.
So our pulse, we have our wrists, and in Western medicine, like you're feeling the rate of the pulse, and that's pretty much it. How many beats per minute,
Right.
essentially. So we do feel for that, but we also feel the rhythm. Are there any irregularities, any missed beats, things like that? And that tells us there could be some sort of cardiovascular underlying issue. And then within the pulse, we usually use 3 fingers to feel each side of the wrist. There are different organs associated with each finger on each side. So just in that initial position, that our first impressions, what we call it, that's 6 different organs right there that it's feeling, really 7. And within that, in contemporary pulse that I use, there's alternate positions as well where you're moving your fingers a little bit, and that's going to be your other organ. So it goes through multiple organs. And depending on what you're feeling, if you feel something called, we'll say slippery, that's the easiest one. Slippery feels kind of like rolls in a dish, like pearls rolling in a dish. It's very kind of
Mhm.
slimy feeling on your pulse. That can indicate someone has a lot of phlegm or dampness in their body. So if you also have a thick tongue coating, or you're feeling very sluggish or bloated or groggy, that usually indicates some sort of dampness or phlegm. And usually that pulse will kind of confirm that. It can also tell us if someone has too much heat in their body, or maybe they're really deficient, they don't have enough substance. Really, so much. It's a really fun party trick, truthfully. I can feel someone's pulse and I'll be like, are you on your period? And they'll be like, yes. And I was like, oh, okay, I thought so. Like, it's
Oh
hilarious.
my
Great.
gosh. I
Yeah.
love that. That's so cool. Yeah. I would love to learn more about it because I would totally do it on myself. But okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about too is the poop, which you talked about, which to me is so funny because I've definitely asked my kids and it's totally embarrassed them. They look at me like, why do you want to look at my poop? And I'm like, well, it tells me like what's going on in your body, right? And or I'll ask them questions. I'm like, okay, like have you gone today? Like what does it look like? Is it, and I kind of describe different things. And I can tell that they're so embarrassed and but that's always an interesting thing. I mean, I look at mine and I'm always like, oh, okay, I think I can tell. I'm always assessing it from a food point of view. And I realize that there are so many other things, and maybe we can touch upon that, right? Because I think what we're ingesting is one, I guess, like one output that can cause the tongue coating or the pulse or the poop to look a certain way. But what are some of the other things that show up, maybe like emotionally, mentally? What other causes are there for what happens in our body?
Oh, so many. So all of our emotions are connected to different organs. So say we'll use spleen chi deficiency, or spleen organ, because that is correlated to our digestive system. So that can directly relate to our bowel movements. And so spleen is heavily affected by overthinking and worry and pensiveness. So think of kind of like that student who is like stressing about their test. I can't get there's some drama going on with their boyfriend or girlfriend, and they can't get the thoughts out of their mind. They're just literally going in a loop, an overworked circle. And so what happens is that can weaken our spleen, our digestive system, and our spleen is responsible for transforming and transporting the food that enters our body and turning it into usable energy or whatever it needs to do. And if you have a lot of worry or you're an excessive worrier, what that can do is that can upset the spleen. And so you end up with nausea, bloating, loose stool, even maybe brain fog, maybe just like abdominal discomfort, anxiety, even like so many different things. Another big one I'll mention is stress. Stress, we all have stress, so it's an easy one to relate to. Stress is something we would associate with the liver. And so a lot of times when there's stress relation to the liver, it's going to usually cause stagnation. Basically, it stops things from moving. So I kind of imagine that person, if you've ever been taking a test or sitting in a quiet room and you hear someone just every like 3 to 4 seconds, they're just sighing nonstop. They have what we would call liver qi stagnation because they are very stressed and they have not figured out how to properly release that qi from their body. So they'll just sigh, and that's our natural mechanism to release some of that qi. And with a lot of stress, it can actually overact on the spleen. So then those symptoms I mentioned earlier can happen as well, because there's a 5 element perspective where wood overact on earth, not to get too complicated into it, but liver can overact on the spleen. A lot of different things can happen with that, where you're just like, they've got rib pain, they've got breast tenderness, PMS, menstrual symptoms. Think of those type of people and when they have stress. So yeah.
I've definitely had a functional medicine doctor be like, yeah, your spleen needs some work or something. And so I'm like, but the way you're describing it, the overthinking, I totally will get in my head about, I have this, my husband will, he like jokes about it, but I have a 3 a.m. wake up.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen always, but there's this thing, whatever it is, I could have gone to bed. Maybe I watched a movie or I read an email before bed or something, and that thing wakes me up. And I keep repeating it and I can't let it go. And I worry about it. And I kind of like, well, I obsess over it, but then it gets me in this crazy rabbit hole loop that I can't get myself out of. And that's my 3 a.m. wake up. And so, yeah.
There is also, not to go in another rabbit hole for you, but there is also a Chinese time clock association with the different.
Oh my God. Yes. I wanted to totally talk to you about this. Let's get in it.
So every 2 hours is associated with a different organ. And the nighttime, so 1 to 3 is our liver and 3 to 5 is our lung. So the emotion associated, so you're right at that cusp. You're right between that liver to lung transition time. So there could be a stress component happening there, or there could be a grief component because the lungs are heavily affected by grief. So depending on what's going on in life and everything, if maybe there's something really heavy you're holding on to, a loss of life, love, job, something in yourself, like anything can create grief in the body, and that can create that wake up time, between that time period. But essentially it means there's some sort of weakness in the lungs if it's between 3 and 5 a.m. But yeah, 1 to 3 is our liver. So it's right there.
Wow, that is so interesting. Okay, the grief component. I'm gonna think about that. I feel like for sure. I'm like, yeah, I think that's definitely one. There's probably a lot of grief about things.
Oh, I'm sure we all have it. We just don't realize it because people associate grief with like a loss of a loved one, and it doesn't always have to be that. It can be so many different things: a loss of yourself, a loss of a transition in your life, anything, and it can create this sadness that you start ruminating on it, and so it creates weakness there.
Just to go back to the 5 elements, because I know you briefly touched upon it. Can you just go through the elements and what do they actually mean?
Yes. So the 5 elements are essentially a systems map. Ancient practitioners, they observed nature, they saw the same patterns inside the body, and each element has an organ pair, it has an emotion, it has a season, it has a tissue, a sense organ, a time of day, a flavor, so many different things associated with each individual element. And they move through 2 cycles. So I wish I had a beautiful picture I could show you, but primarily there is this generating cycle, which is just kind of going in a circular motion where it's a mother feeding the child, essentially. And then there is this controlling cycle, which kind of creates a star diagram within the 5 elements. And that's just kind of keeping each other in check. It's like the grandmother-grandson relationship. And so when one singular element is off, it becomes a cascade. And that's why the symptoms begin to cluster, and they might feel very random to individuals, but they are very, very closely connected just by looking at the 5 elements. So again, not to go into too detail where it becomes overwhelming, but wood is our liver and our gallbladder. So it is associated with the springtime. It's this upward and outward push of the new growth. And it's when yang is starting to rise. We just came from winter to spring. So winter is our most yin time, and spring is starting to get warmer. And so it starts to go into our yang time, which will ultimately be summer. And wood time is associated with the, again, liver time 1 to 3 a.m. and the gallbladder, which is right before that 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And when things get stuck in this element, we get that, again, that PMS, that clotting, the migraines, and so on and so forth. The things just feel blocked. And then fire, which is right after wood. So fire is our heart, our small intestines, it's our pericardium, our sangel, which our sangel is kind of like this, not imaginary, but it's this overall organ cascade. So anyways, fire is associated with summertime. It's the most yang time of year. It's a lot of expression, a lot of joy, a lot of connection, and it governs our circulation. It governs our sleep, our speech, our complexion, shen, mind, all of that stuff. And when it's not in balance, we get symptoms like insomnia or palpitations, anxiety, brain fog, inappropriate laughter. So joy can actually be pathological when there's a fire imbalance. So like kind of think of that like manic person that's just like laughing uncomfortably. That could be an excessive joy imbalance. Fire, we love bitter things. So bitter helps to bring things down. So keep the fire from blazing, essentially. And then earth, the third element, is our center element. It's our spleen and our stomach, which is our most important digestive center. It's the late summer. It's also that kind of transition between seasons. It's the kind of the pause to allow us to catch up and move on. And this is where it's affected by that worry, that overthinking, that rumination. And earth is, when it's weak, nothing else can be nourished. So it really is literally the center. And then metal is our lung and our large intestine. And this is our autumn time, which is all about letting go. When you think about the lung and the large intestine, the lung is letting air out of the body. The large intestine is purging out the digestive, the bowels. So letting go, refining that inward turn. And so grief and sadness, if we can't let that go, we internalize it and it weakens our lungs and our large intestine. And our immune system is heavily affected by this element and by the lungs, the skin, the nose, all of that is also connected to the lungs. So if you have dry skin, there is a heavy correlation to the lungs being not nourished the way they should. And if you're someone or you know someone who gets colds really easily, they get allergies, asthma, all of that is telling us there is a metal imbalance there. And then water, I think is the last one. Yes, water is the kidney and the bladder. This is our winter time. So this is the utmost yin. This is when it's all about deep rest and storage. And it's the time to replenish what has been lost throughout the rest of the year. So emotion associated with this is fear. A really good example for me sometimes is kids who maybe wet the bed. People might not realize this, but there is probably a fear component to it in some way or another, or it could be a kidney essence weakness of some sorts. There's something connected to the kidneys. This is usually associated with like low back pain. Maybe they've been burned out. They've got premature graying of their hair. They've got hearing issues, fertility issues, hormonal collapse, things like that, fear-based decisions. All of that's associated with the water element. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. Water is the most resting time of year. It's associated with salty flavors. You think of going to the beach with the water, you think salt, seafoods and stuff like that. It's a little more cold.
Wow. Yeah, there's so much there. Oh my goodness. I feel like I'm going to need to go back and
I
listen to all
know.
of it.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
But they're so interesting because I was thinking of, so you were saying asthma is metal, like a metal imbalance.
Correct. Yeah.
So when kids have asthma, they're just sort of born with this metal imbalance.
So a couple things can happen with that. There is something also called kidney not grasping the chi. So what happens is the kidney has to be able to come up and, bring the energy and meet the lungs and pull some of this chi down. And whenever that's not happening, then they can have those asthma-like symptoms. So it could also be what we call an essence deficiency. And essence comes in two forms. So it comes with prenatal essence and postnatal essence. And prenatal essence is what you're born with. It's what's provided to you from your parents. And so if there is a weakness, maybe your parents didn't take very good care of themselves. Maybe they already had a predisposed weakness in themselves, and then they pass that down to you. So they end up the child ends up weak, and they're born with what they're born with. So then they can end up with some of these other symptoms. So it could very well be this kidney lung connection there.
Oh, got it. Got it. Okay. Okay. So I've been following a lot of your posts, and in one of them, which really was interesting to me, was you kind of mentioned this story of people go to the doctor, they get all these lab tests done, but everything is coming back normal. Everything's checking out. I don't know what's going on, right? But at the same time, they're still experiencing whatever they're experiencing, right? And they're still feeling miserable and all this stuff. When you do labs, right, what are you actually like, how are you assessing that from a TCM perspective? And I know that we sort of went through it a little bit, but what else are you observing?
Yeah. So, starting from the TCM perspective, so conventional labs catch disease, right? Like they catch when things are outside of this normal window, and that normal window is very broad. And that normal window is measuring not healthy people all the time. It's measuring the general population, and not everyone in that general population is going to be healthy. So, that range that they're looking at is not functional. So, there's something called an optimal range or a functional range, which is a lot smaller within that normal window. So even though you say they go get a CBC and thyroid panel and this and that, and everything looked normal within that, the doctor's going to say it's normal. There's nothing for them to be concerned about because it's not with an actual sign of disease. With what I do with functional medicine, the Chinese medicine is we look at these optimal ranges and we try to catch dysfunction the years before disease begins. So if something is not inside that optimal range and it's within this suboptimal, we want to work on it now before it gets beyond that. And I'm looking at a pattern. Is this spleen qi deficiency, for example, or liver qi stagnation, kidney yin deficiency, whatever it may be. And I also usually don't run just your general blood work whenever I do labs because they can go to their primary care for that and share that with me if they want. But I usually run very in-depth functional labs like gut panels or hormone panels or organic acid tests, nutrient zoomers, things like this that are measuring like upwards of 500 markers. And it's things that your regular doctor will never ever test for unless they're, I mean, nothing against conventional medicine. There's some doctors that are going to hardcore advocate for you, but it's not the norm anymore, which is really sad. So, for example, someone can come to me with fatigue, with bloating, brain fog, and their labs are going to say normal, but
Right.
they only did like maybe a B12, maybe a vitamin D, and, maybe some mineral or electrolytes or whatever. And that was, it was okay. But TCM is going to say that is, again, I'm just going to say spleen qi deficiency, but that's spleen qi deficiency. And your tongue is showing me that, your symptoms are showing me that, everything about you is telling me this is spleen qi deficiency. So I'm going to treat it accordingly that way. And that becomes very validating for people. And then also I will, on top of that, do say a gut zoomer panel, and it's going to go through all these different DNA based stool tests to confirm what I'm seeing. And we usually find so much different stuff in those DNA based stool tests. It's amazing. So yeah.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting that there are so many different labs that can be done that actually aren't done. And so my husband, he recently got bit by a tick and then he had Lyme disease.
Mhm.
And this is his second time getting it. And so, of course, he went to the doctor. They gave him some antibiotics to go on. I mean, he seems to be fine right now, but he was telling me a story about someone that he knew who had Lyme and who was just feeling awful, but the doctors couldn't find the Lyme. They did all this lab work and they're like, you don't have anything. You're not showing up to have Lyme disease. Anyway, he had gone on for like such a long time with these different illnesses and just not feeling great. So he finally found this different doctor. I think it was like a functional medicine doctor that ended up doing a whole panel of other tests. And they ended up finding that, yes, he had Lyme. It was just not the Lyme that is typically tested in like lab results. And I had never heard of that the labs that you're getting at your regular doctor are only testing for a small portion actually of what is actually out there. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, I love the fact that your assessment takes an hour and that you're doing all this other workup on individuals, right? Because I think we don't know what we don't know. And yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, it's an unfortunate part of the insurance game with health insurance. They can only do what will be dictated by their health insurance, and a lot of people can't afford with functional medicine care is not covered by insurance. So it can get really expensive really quick, which is it's disheartening, but it's great that if people have the resources and ability to go pursue looking into this stuff because it's the only way to get the answers that you need, which breaks my
yeah,
heart.
yeah. And I mean, health is, I would say, one of the biggest things that people have questions about, right? I mean, if you're not feeling great, if you're not healthy, then the rest of your life is also not going to be that great, right? I feel like we kind of need to cover that base. It's such an important part of what we do. And there's such a big, I guess, push on wellness, right? And I think when we think of wellness, we're often thinking of it from such an external perspective. It's like, what do we look like? And I'm always the one that's like, well, yeah, we could look a specific way, but what do we look like on the inside, right? Like we can't see that. No one can really see that unless you're doing all this other work. So, yeah,
Exactly.
super important. What drew you to Chinese medicine versus another path?
Oh man. So I actually used to work in Western medicine. I worked for a neurologist who was a genius. I feel like I became a mini doctor learning from her. I was one of her medical scribes and we did pretty much all the work for her. Like, that's just how it is
Yeah.
when you work in those type of fields. And I started to notice a pattern where all these patients say they came in for neuropathy, for example. Neuropathy is a nerve disorder, and depending on the original cause of it, diabetic or idiopathic or whatever. And the only solutions that were ever given to them, first they do an EMG study to confirm the diagnosis of neuropathy. So they're little electrodes into the skin and they shock them. And then after that, it's gabapentin or Lyrica. It's only two medications, and then that's pretty much the only solution that I ever saw be prescribed. And yeah, the gabapentin would help, okay, but they'd have to go to such a high dose. And the side effect of gabapentin for a lot of people was drowsiness. And so these people are starting to have less nerve pain, but now they're super sleepy during the day. Lyrica was a little bit better in that aspect, but it wasn't always like approved for people's insurance, and it was super expensive for people. So that, people with migraines, kind of same situation. They come in, they have headaches, migraines, they do an MRI with her and get the same 4 or 5 medications. They come back with a side effect, they get another medication. It just felt like this loop. Like, there was never an end in sight. There was never well, how do we fix this? What's actually happening inside the body? Just here's a medication and go about your way. And I didn't make this connection till later, but I've had my own medical history and such, and I was always dismissed. I had a surgery way back when that really messed me up, and I was literally vomiting for 13 years, like vomiting blood and everything. And what they would tell me when I go to the doctor for is, oh, you have to go to the emergency room if you're vomiting blood. Like, we can give you a omeprazole. That's it. That was it. Nothing else. And at the time, it was partially like an insurance issue. Like, my insurance wasn't going to cover what I needed it to cover. And they didn't offer me like payment plans to like pay for this out of pocket to fix it. They were just like, yep, this is your only option. And I'm like, well, that sucks. So yeah, I was like, there's got to be another way. And so then I eventually applied to a school for acupuncture. Honestly, I thought it was a scam. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know what
Oh my
acupuncture
God.
was. Like, I had no idea. I had a friend who was going to school for acupuncture, and I was like, man, that's really cool. It must be kind of like one of those little like technical schools or whatever. Like, you don't know what you don't know, like you said. And acupuncture, Chinese medicine, is an entire medical system. It is a medical school, and people don't know that or realize that. So I applied for the school. It was a private school, completely covered by financial aid. And it's a 3.5 year program, 40 months, and you get a master's and a bachelor's degree from the program. It's very accelerated. It's very draining in the best way possible because you have so much information to put in there. So I had never even had acupuncture until I went and observed that school. And the reason why I thought it was a scam was because the same day I put in an inquiry to apply for it, I got a call from them. And I was like, there's no way this is real. But it's because it's a
Oh,
private school. They don't have a whole bunch of students per se, because not everyone's looking into being an acupuncturist. So I went to the school. I absolutely loved it. I graduated top of my class. And then I decided I wanted to pursue the doctorate. So like, I spent a lot of time learning all the things. But yeah, it was just my own experience plus seeing how other people were treated. And I was just like, there's got to be another way. So yeah.
oh, that's awesome. I can't believe that story. Oh my gosh. Like 13 years.
Yeah.
That seems like a lifetime.
It was so
Oh
long.
gosh.
So long.
So did you end up like, figuring out your own, I would say, heal yourself through your studies and through acupuncture? And
Yeah, mostly. Part of it, I do still have to have a surgery to fix the thing, but I just haven't had the surgery yet. But it is fixed. And like, at this point, it's more of just like, I want to get the surgery to fix it finally, but it is as fixed as much as it possibly can be fixed. And it's funny because learning all the things that I know and knowing the symptoms that I had, when I look at my tongue, I can see like I have this crack in the middle of my tongue, which is a sign of this like long-term severe fluid depletion in the digestive system, which is exactly what I was having symptom-wise. And I'm like, wow, that's so cool. And now that things have gotten better over the last couple years, I have noticed that crack has slowly started to heal itself. And I'm like, this is really cool just to see it in myself and knowing that my patients and clients can also see that too for themselves. And I'm like, yeah, this is real. It's so real.
the crack is actually, yes, I've actually noticed that as well. And I mean, of course, I'm on Google and I'm like, what does this mean on the tongue? Right. And this was like a couple years ago where I also had a crack in the middle of my tongue. And of course, I don't drink a lot of water during my day. I don't know why. As a kid, I was not drinking a lot of water. And it's not a habit that I have. I love drinking my coffee. I love drinking tea. I love drinking other things, but water is like the last thing on the list. So yeah, so I've had to make a very like conscious, concerted effort to like drink more water, drink more water. Like I have to do it because, and of course my tongue has been like, yeah, I was like, I don't want that crack in there. So-
Exactly. Now, I will say sometimes water isn't always a cure-all if it is a fluid depletion. Then there's other things that have to change. But I mean, it's a good start, at least. It's a good start.
Yes. Well, at least the crack's not there anymore. So I feel like that might have been just the cost.
It could have been. It could have been. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I was like, okay. But yeah, so this is great. Let me go back to the healing piece. So if you have a metal deficiency or a water deficiency, do you balance it out with another element, or how do you begin to heal some of those deficiencies?
Sometimes you do. So, if, for example, you have a metal deficiency, so metal controls water. So, if the metal is deficient, that means that it cannot properly generate water. So, ultimately, it's going to imbalance water if metal stays unchecked. And same thing with controlling wood, because metal controls wood in this cycle. So, if water cannot control wood, what can happen is wood can counteract and insult metal. So, it can actually cause other issues. So, if there is a deficiency, you do want to supplement however appropriate for that element, so that way it does not hinder other elements. If it has started hindering other elements, you want to obviously support the weakened element, but also support or balance the elements around it. So that way it does also kind of create this harmonious cycle that it should be.
And when we say support, and again, I'm always kind of thinking about it from a food perspective, but are there also emotional things that you can do? Or maybe we can take asthma as an example, or even the spleen deficiency, right? So if that area is deficient, are there things like, do you want to process your grief, for example, or your fear, or are those sort of ways to begin to heal that? And I realize that food and medicine and teas are not always the solution. I feel like there are other things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If there is that emotional component, I mean, the biggest thing that we can always say is like an easy starting point is to journal your emotions to see like where you're feeling and when you're feeling and what you're feeling, who, what, when, where, why. And that way you can figure out if there is a pattern. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the pattern happening and figuring out how to balance that pattern because there's some sort of imbalance happening somewhere. So if it is associated with emotion, then absolutely balancing that emotion, however appropriate, whether that be breath work or qigong or meditation, even journaling, any of those type of techniques are going to be super, super beneficial. Acupuncture does work to an extent, but there has to be lifestyle adjustments on the side. Herbal medicine will also help, but yeah, there has to be something on their end, on the client or the patient's end to really fix it.
Right, right. Yeah. I always say that too. It's like you can go to a practitioner or a doctor or whoever, but that's like one part of the journey, right? The other journey has to be done at home when we're not looking, right? When the practitioner is not there to constantly guide or provide some type of a supplement or support. So
Yeah.
self-awareness is super important.
Yes.
Is there like a common sign that you might see that people often ignore, or maybe something common that shows up very often with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So, sleep changes are a big one. If people start to notice that they're waking frequently in the middle of the night, like we'll say 1 to 3 is a pretty common window for a lot of people, especially if they're dealing with stress. That could tell us that their liver detox window. So that could tell us that their liver is maybe congested or they've got a lot of stress, like I said. So that can be associated. If they're waking between 3 and 5, again, there might be some unprocessed grief there. Really, anytime waking in the middle of the night, are they having frequent waking? Because that could be something else. That's a big one. And people don't always associate that with anything. They just think they're not sleeping well. Digestive shifts are a big one. Bloating after meals, maybe changes in their stool. People have gotten so used and accommodated to going to the bathroom once every 4 or 5 days. And they think that's normal because that's been their normal for their whole life. And it's like, no, that's not normal. We can fix that. And new food sensitivities is a big one. That's obviously not something that should be new. Like it shouldn't just one day you wake up and be allergic to gluten. That's not how the body works. That's something that can be worked on. If their periods are changing, they got PMS. Maybe they suddenly have clotting. Maybe their cycle has lengthened or shortened. So the cycle gives us really, I mean, it sounds cliche, but it really is a monthly report card to tell us how our liver, how our kidneys, how our spleen are doing like collectively because they all work together to help with our cycle. Tongue changes is a big one. People, I always recommend look at your tongue every single day. And, in the morning, first thing when you wake up before you brush your teeth, just so you can see if there's anything that your body is telling you that you wouldn't know otherwise. So like scalloping on the sides, if there's a thick coating, if there's cracks, if it's more red, if it's more pale, the sublinguals underneath our tongue, if there's a lot of thick veins down there, that tells us that things are not moving, the blood is not moving. Energy crashing at specific times of day is a good one. Mood being disproportionate. Yeah, a lot of different things can happen. People maybe not realize and they think they're normal for them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I totally resonated with like the stool one, right? So like there were years where like I would not go every single day.
Mhm.
And I agree. I thought it was totally normal. Like I was like, I don't go every day. Like that's totally fine. And then I forgot I went to a doctor and they're like, no, that's not normal. And I've had to like be very conscious about eating a lot of fiber. And I just changed it in my diet and like how I eat and processed foods. But of course, if I'm traveling, for example, that always kind of like skews things and messes things up. But yeah, that's an interesting one. And I think the fact that like people will go about their day or their life just like this is normal, this is who I am. And again, it's because we're not really having those open conversations with people. I mean, of course, we're not talking about our poop, right? Like, like who are you going to really share that with, right?
Right.
So, I mean, unless that there's a huge issue, and I think that's the other thing is that we typically will prolong things, and mostly because we just don't know. And so when things get really bad and when things are like dire is when we're seeking help, when we're looking for support. But I think maybe to that end, you mentioned this, right? What are some things that people can start doing on a regular basis to just look at and pay attention to?
Yeah, yeah, definitely the tongue. Paying attention to the color of the face. Are you noticing puffiness, like even or changes in the face, like puffiness under the eyes, dark rings under the eyes, like texture of the skin on the face, like new wrinkles showing up? Even though, yes, that's quote unquote aging, it can actually be a sign of other things in the body going on. And then, as well as just literally journaling your day at 8 a.m., like doing check ins with yourself. How did I feel at 8 a.m.? How was my energy? Did I go to the bathroom? Did I eat breakfast? Am I on my period? If so, like, what's my cycle like? Am I in any pain? Like, doing literally like a medical wellness check-in for yourself on a daily basis, or at least every couple of days, just to see if you notice any patterns in yourself. Because like I said, patterns at the end of the day, if everything stays consistent, it might be your normal. But I would say if there's a lot of things that are not the normal within Chinese medicine, they need to be addressed. So at least doing a journal of your symptoms as well as looking at the tongue. And that could be a part of the journal. Trackers online, they have tons of apps for it now at this point.
Yeah, definitely. What's a question that no one ever asks, but you wish that they would?
So I always have to preface this with my online clients because, everyone, when they start to work with a practitioner, they're really excited. They're really, really hopeful that things are just going to immediately start feeling better. And really, I would say, what does healing actually look like? Because it's not linear. It's not going to just be all ups from day 1 to day 90 or whatever time frame I'm working with them. It's not going to be symptom free. It's about resilience and capacity. And there's going to be a lot of ups, but there's also going to be a lot of downs. And sometimes it's not going to be like you're going straight up and maybe you have a little fall and you go up higher. Like sometimes it's little bit. And there's some people who feel worse halfway through working together than they did before they started. And that's always a part of the process. And that's why I try to do the full picture with the functional labs and the Chinese medicine. So that way we have this measurable digital data as well as what their body is saying actively with their tongue changes and so on and so forth. But really, like, being in tune and being aware of like healing is not always going to be this positive journey.
Mm. And why does it dip?
There are so many different things. So, like, you clear one thing depending on the route that we're taking. If we're
Oh, I
building,
see. Yeah.
yeah, you clear one thing and that makes way for the next thing to have to be cleared. Or a lot of my clients that I work with online have like a lot of digestive stuff, like gut dysbiosis. There's a lot of bacteria that are out of balance. They've got leaky gut, they've got H. pylori, all these different things. And those things have to be eradicated. They have to be balanced. They have to be built back up and everything. And it's not always like the simple, easy one and done, because once this thing is all messed up, it affects all these other systems in the body, like our estrogen clearance, which affects, it's going to be our hormones and so on and so forth. So everything just feels so crazy in the midst of it. And it's power to have the knowledge to know how to fix it and to know beyond working together how to fix it. But it's messy. It's going to be messy because these things didn't happen overnight, and we're trying to accelerate the process. So it's still trying to get all these things fixed in a short period of time. It can get a little chaotic sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great reminder. I think anytime you're starting like a brand new journey, whether it's self-discovery or some other type of journey where you're really digging into yourself and digging into your inner world, you're not always going to be like riding high the whole time. There are definitely going to be those dips. So yeah, that makes sense. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Anything else that you wanted to address or bring up that maybe we didn't cover?
Well, I will say I'm going to give two little tidbits for anyone that listens of what they can do starting now if they want to work on their health. And the
Yes.
first one is wear socks. That was one of the very first things that I went viral for on social media 2 years ago was I made a video about socks. And I know that sounds very crazy. I got called woo-woo and all the things by telling people they should wear socks for their menstrual health, for their kidneys, for their liver, for their spleen, for everything. It's going to help improve your sleep. It's going to help with muscle cramps. It's going to help with your periods. It's going to help with your digestion. Yeah, wear socks. And I don't mean like little girly thin socks that you buy at Walmart. I mean like the thick wool socks. Keep your feet warm. Don't walk on cold surfaces without having some sort of barrier between your feet and the cold, because cold can shock and can constrict everything in the stomach, in the uterus, and it can cause so many issues. That is like the simplest, easiest, freest thing that people can do starting today. And they might say it's a sensory issue, but they'll get over it. Wear socks.
I love that.
Yes, it's my favorite thing. Like I said, I'm big, like I'm wearing socks right now and I wear my husband's socks now. I don't even wear like I don't own my regular socks anymore. I literally just wear his because they make them better than women's socks. So yeah, wear socks.
So like the ones that come up like mid calf, like that kind of a sock.
Yeah, yeah. I think mine's kind of like, you can see him, but
Okay. Yes.
literally that's like this. I mean, you don't have to go that crazy, but like, at least above the ankle, ideally above the ankle.
Okay. Why above the ankle?
Just so it protects the whole foot, and then it kind
Okay.
of covers, like, there's a point called spleen 6, and then there's another point called kidney 3, and those are like very, very important points for our spleen channel. The spleen 6 is like the meeting point of all the spleen, liver, and the kidney, so it's a very, very strong, powerful point. So keeping that point covered is just, it's going to be beneficial for just the general nourishment and just the capacity of what's in that point. And then kidney 3 is a root kidney chi point, so just, yeah, that's on the back of our ankle, so we like to keep that covered. But yeah,
Okay.
and so yeah, wear socks. And then the other thing is stop drinking iced coffee in the morning. People get so sad at me. And I'm not gonna lie, I like a good iced chai tea latte sometimes too. But if you're an iced latte girly and you also have tummy issues, then you don't need the iced lattes, because that's why. So stop the iced lattes. Go for a hot one at least, and eat breakfast. Stop skipping breakfast.
Oh my gosh, I'm so big on having like whenever I go to a restaurant, I say water, no ice. I just want like room temp. I
Mhm.
hate cold things like and like my kids laugh at me. They're like, well, Mom, why are you not? And I'm like, I can't even just the idea of drinking like an iced drink. I can't even stand it anymore. It actually makes me cold to think about it. And I mean, they're young, so I'm like, they want those like ice cold drinks. I was like, not me. I can't do it. Sometimes I just do hot water in the morning, but I do hot coffee all year round. Doesn't matter if it's 90 degrees out. I'm not doing that.
9 times out of 10, when I go out to eat, I always order a hot water with lemon, but then I'll also order a water without ice. So that way I at least have something a little more like neutral with my meal, because my meal's obviously going to be hot. And really drinking that hot water before having anything else makes such a huge difference. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I remember whenever I was younger and I didn't know any better and I just have my iced tea or my ice water and I drink that before my meal, I would literally be freezing. And I'm like freezing in the restaurant. I'm like, I need a jacket and like my hands are cold and so on and so forth. And I needed my food to warm me up. But that just tells you you're deficient. You don't need all that cold in your body. You need more warmth, and warmth will help also kind of start your digestive fire. So then that way your body will process the food better too.
Now, is there something to like women typically feeling colder than men? Or is that, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with women bleed, every month. So we're losing so much blood. So women tend to lean more towards blood deficiency in Chinese medicine than men do. And that's not the same equivalent as anemia in Western medicine. It just means that the blood is not able to properly nourish the body the way it should. And then we end up feeling more tired. We end up feeling maybe dizzy, maybe cold hands and feet, or just cold in general, because the blood is not making it to the extremities to make us feel warm. So yeah, it absolutely makes sense from a Chinese medicine perspective.
Yeah, yeah, got it. Because yeah, I've always been like, I always need a jacket and like, and I also have fluctuations where I'm like, I'm hot 1 second and then I'm like, oh, I need, like, I always need to carry something with me because I just never know when I'm going to be cold or not.
I
But the
know.
extremities has always been that thing for me. Like, my fingertips are always cold and my toes are always cold, which is why I wear socks or
Mhm.
slippers, like, always in the house. So,
Yes.
well, thank you for those two tidbits. I think those are easy and super helpful. And if they can already start to make an impact, then awesome.
Yes, absolutely. I will say the sock one, I've been told thousands of times by people online how socks have literally changed their life. And I'm like, thank you. I need to screenshot these and make a whole video about them, but I never did and I lost them. But it's seriously, it's life changing just wearing socks.
Awesome. So where can people learn more about you and work with you if they're interested?
Yeah, I mean, straight through my Instagram. I'm working on making a website specifically for me. I do have an in-person practice, but I specifically work with people online. They can go straight to my Instagram at Kassie Sorokach, and I have a link on there. They can schedule a strategy call with one of my team members and go through the various options. I have a couple different program options. We try to accommodate what they need, and we have a lot of great people on our team. We have a lot of coaches that are also TCM mindset. So I've got people with my same knowledge, and a lot of them were actually my students. So they know exactly how I think in my medicine, the way I do it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on, for sharing your insights. And yeah, thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. If you're interested in becoming a client and working with me, visit me at nunatherapy.com or follow me on social media at Nuna Therapy for regular content and inspiration. Until next time.